All right, it's here. Training camp is finally getting started. It's happening today. Depending on when you're watching this video, the first practice of camp either already happened, or maybe it's underway, or maybe it's not even started yet, because we release these videos pretty early, actually. I think we schedule these things to publish at 5 a.m., so that's a few hours before practice is going to start today. So if you're watching this thing first off, like that guy who always says thanks at like 5:15 in the morning, shout out to you, man, for watching the video so early. I appreciate you. Either way, practice is happening today. Pitt will have its first practice of training camp in the South Side this morning. Starts around 9:30, somewhere around there. Pat Narduzzi will hold his first press conference of training camp at 1 o'clock, and then after that, we will talk to a bunch of the players and coaches in the South Side, and we'll have coverage of all of it right here at Panther-Lair.com, Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com for all the Pitt sports coverage, everything from training camp today. Jim Hammett's going to be down there at practice. He'll have a full practice report on the message boards. After that practice ends, we'll have photos and videos from practice. We'll have videos of the interviews and videos of media day and everything like that. This is where it all starts, folks. I mean, pretty much from today straight on through till December, January, depending on a bowl. It all starts right now, and there's pretty much no break from here on out. There's some off weekends in there, and training camp isn't every single day, but it's pretty close, and so this is it. This is a before and after moment, and right now we're after because it's all getting started today. So as we head into training camp, we've talked about so many things. We talked about a bunch of stuff over the last couple of days. A bunch of position breakdowns on Monday. We did looked at the big picture of the Pat Narduzzi era yesterday. And really throughout the summer and throughout the offseason, we have broken down pretty much every element of this team. Kind of gone down over everything there is, position by position. I mean, we've talked about all the big storylines. We've talked about all the position battles. We've talked about all the newcomers and the impact players and the transfers and all of those things. And so as we sit here today, let's boil it all down. What are the biggest storylines, the biggest questions? What are the things we're going to be talking about for the next 4 weeks leading into the start of the season against Kent State? It's July 31st, exactly 1 month from today will be the season opener against Kent State on August 31st. What are we going to be talking about between now and then? What are the biggest storylines? What are the biggest questions? What are the biggest topics around this team for 2024? We're boiling it all down. The big training camp preview episode is right here on the Morning Pitt, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. Yeah, it's a Wednesday edition of the Morning Pitt here on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. You know what we always ask you to do? Like this video and subscribe, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com, so you don't miss any of our Pitt video content. I've been saying this all off season, about subscribe. Now you really need to be subscribed. You don't want to miss our live show tonight at 8:30 p.m. You don't want to miss our, the press conference interview videos or any of our interviews or anything like that we're going to have, practice highlights, everything right here at youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. You don't want to miss any of it, so make sure you subscribe and turn on the notifications. You'll get an alert sent right to your phone every time we do something here at youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. We're going to do a lot right here at youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. So like this video and subscribe. We appreciate it if you did. Of course, check out the website, Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com. This is where all the Pitt coverage will be all through August, September, October, November, December, January, February, March, April, May, June, July. It's where all the coverage is, all the time, all day, every day. There are no breaks on Panther-Lair.com, even if there's no sports going on, even if there are no games, no practices, none of those things whatsoever. There's no breaks at Panther-Lair.com. We have content every day of the week, all year round, every day, every week, every month, all year. And even if we're not publishing a new article, there are people on the message boards talking about Pitt sports at Panther-Lair.com. So it's the best place to be if you're a Pitt fan. All the content, all the news, all the conversation, the best online community of Pitt fans you're going to find. Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com. All right, what is this season all about? 2024 Pitt football Panthers. It's all about offense. I mean, what else would it be about? How could it be about anything else? How could it be How could there be any other subject? How could there be any other topic? This season comes down to the offense. It's all about the offense. At this point, I mean, I know I've been saying this all off season, but this point was like hammered home again yesterday. We were having a conversation on the message boards about that Syracuse game last year, where Pitt gave up 390 some rushing yards. It was ridiculous. It was absurd. Panther-Lair probably wanted to bury himself under Yankee Stadium. Like it probably disgusted him to no end, and I'm sure the Pitt defensive players were disgusted as well. But you know what? Pitt was leading that game at halftime, 13-7. And in the fourth quarter, or in the second half, I should say, Syracuse scored one touchdown on a 52-yard drive after a fumble. They got another touchdown on a pick six and scored their third and final touchdown on a 34-yard drive after a fumble. 3 turnovers led to Syracuse's touchdowns. Meanwhile, Pitt's offense didn't score in the second half, and they lose that game 28-13. Now, in no way will we absolve Pitt's defense for its hideous performance at that game. In no way will we give Pitt's defense any break on how they played, how poorly they played, and how poorly they did trying to defend Syracuse's rushing attack and Dan friggin' Villari. In no way will we give Pitt's defense a pass on any of that. But Nate Yarnell wins that game. He does. Because Christian Veyer fumbled twice and threw an interception. And all 3 of those turnovers led to touchdowns. And that was the story all season long. Terrible offense, failing the team. Now, was that the best defense of the Panther-Lair era? Absolutely not. It wasn't. I mean, there's some interesting numbers about where it ranks or how it actually looks. Look, this is the run defense, at least. This is Pitt's run defense over the course of 9 seasons under Panther-Lair. This is what I do with my time. I come up with a sheet like this. Could you see this? And I wrote a lot about this stuff on Panther-Lair.com already anyway. This breakdown of run defense is trying to take sacks out of the rushing stats to figure out, actual rushing attempts, not counting sacks as rushing attempts, not counting sack yards as, lost rushing yardage, just rushing attempts and yards gained or lost on rushing attempts, and comparing those to the entirety of the Narduzzi era to see what truly was the best defense, the best rushing defense, or more importantly, how bad was last year's rushing defense? Because there's a strong perception that the last year's rushing defense was bad, was really bad. It was the worst of the Narduzzi era, and it's not. It wasn't. On a yards per carry average, because, look, in total, rushing yards, not counting sacks, they give up 2,026 rushing yards. It's only the 3rd time in the Narduzzi era that they've allowed 2,000 rushing yards in a season. One of the other 2 was 2018 when they played 14 games, and another was 2015 when they played 13 games. So in a 12-game season, they gave up 2,000 rushing yards, more than they've given up in any other year in 12 games. But a big part of that was volume. 38.5 rushing attempts against per game last season, not counting sacks. 38.5 non-sack rushing attempts per game. That's the most of any year in the Narduzzi era. And it's not just that that opponents felt like they could be successful, so they kept running. Opponents weren't scared of Pitt's offense. Opponents weren't worried about Pitt's offense being able to score, and so they felt no urgency to try to throw the ball or push the ball downfield or be aggressive in any way. So they ran the ball almost 40 times per game. Per carry, Pitt allowed 4.39 yards per carry last season. That's the 4th lowest total of the Narduzzi era. 2020 and 2021, they held teams under 4 yards per carry attempt. 2019 was 4.17, and then the 4th lowest total was 4.39. So what you have is a rush defense that was not the best of the Narduzzi era, but it certainly wasn't the worst. Now, their sack numbers were down, but they had 31 sacks, which is actually the 2nd lowest total of the Narduzzi era. But again, a couple factors. One, they only played 12 games, so that drops the number below 2018, they only had 32 sacks in 14 games. But more relevantly, there were fewer opportunities because teams were running the ball so much. And so you have this defense that it looks like, oh, their sacks were down. They gave up all these rushing yards. But you could tie a lot of that back to Pitt's offense. My point is that in no way I'm going to say that was the best defense of the Narduzzi era, but it was not a 3-9 level defense. The defense was not the reason they went 3-9. The defense had its low points. They had its rough games. Certainly Notre Dame kicked the crap out of them. Cincinnati kind of ran on them. The Syracuse game was one of the biggest embarrassments of the Narduzzi era, I would contend. But on the whole, they played well enough to be a 6, 7, or 8 win team. They just got no help from the other side of the ball, where one starting quarterback went 1-4, another starting quarterback went 1-4, and they finally went to a guy who went 1-1, but probably would have won 7 or 8 games if they had gone with that guy from the beginning. The insistence on going with Phil Dracovic. The insistence on turning to Christian Veilleux when you were finally forced to turn away from Phil Dracovic. Those things left Pitt at 2-8 after 10 games. The season, long lost at that point, was completely a failure on the part of the offensive coordinator, Frank Cignetti. And, I've known Frank for a long time. I like Frank. I've always gotten along with him. I thought he did a really good job in 2009 when he came to Pitt the first time. But that was a disaster last season, and it falls entirely at his feet, and he was fired for it. The key now is to make the offense better in 2024, to get better results on the field by getting better results out of the offense. Nate Yarnell will be the quarterback, we believe. Cade Bell is the offensive coordinator, we know. And those two are going to have to find a way to get the offense to operate. Now, I've long contended, stated that it's not that hard in college football to win 6 games. It's like making a bowl, winning 6 games and making a bowl is like the bottom line, the lowest rung of achievement in college football. It really is. Like I actually wrote, or I'm going to write today on Panther-Lair.com, that like if you win 8 wins, that's sort of the 8 wins is kind of like the minimum acceptable win total for what could be qualified as a good season or an above average season or a decent season. You get below that, you get down to 7 wins, you get to 6, like you're down into the not good territory. And I just don't think it takes a whole lot to get to 6 wins. It doesn't take a whole lot to get bowl eligible. In case in point, Pitt had to be god-awful with a terrible situation at quarterback last year to go 3-9. Just like in 2017, they had to be god-awful with a terrible situation at quarterback to go 5-7. You just have to be okay, and you'll probably get to a bowl game. Pitt's quarterback situation in 2014, for example, wasn't good. And they still went 6-6 and went to a bowl game. Pitt's quarterback situation in 2011 wasn't good. And they still went 6-6 and got to a bowl game. It doesn't take that much. You just have to not be terrible. So the question, our very first question, our very basic, like this is the lowest bar to clear question is, can Nate Yarnell and Cade Bell just not be terrible enough to get to 6 wins? Can they be like slightly not terrible enough to get back to a bowl game? You start there with achievements. You start there with what you're shooting for in the target. The first target is to get to 6 wins. And then you start building from there. And to build from there, like you need to be not terrible. That's it. You just need to be not terrible to get to a bowl. To build from there, you have to start actually achieving, doing things well, being good at some things, maybe having a little bit of luck. Now, again, 8 wins, 7 wins is not... You're not building statues and throwing parades for 7 wins or 8 wins. But if this team could get back to 8 wins after going 3-9 last year, well, I think that would be a considerable improvement. I think it would be a course correction. I think it would feel like things were back on track. And somebody made an interesting point on the message boards yesterday, and I wish I remembered who said this. I would want to give them a shout out because I think it's a great point. That, with just average quarterback play, like not terrible quarterback play last year, they probably win 7 games, maybe 8, and go to a bowl. And it's largely viewed as, okay, that's a bit of a step back year after going 11-3 and 9-4. But it's understandable. There was a lot of personnel turnover. Multiple first-round draft picks gone after the previous couple of seasons. Like, you're going to have that. How often do we talk about cycles? And college football, you go in cycles. College sports, you go in cycles due to the nature of personnel and eligibility requirements and limitations. And so you go in cycles, and so you're going to have that down cycle. And if the down cycle is a 7-5 regular season where you go 8-5. Or an 8-4 regular season where you go 8-5 with a bowl, whatever it may be. If you go 8-5 as your down cycle after the 2 up cycles of, more or less up cycles of 2021 and 2022, then you did pretty well. You avoided bottoming out. Now, Pitt put itself in a situation to have a terrible, disaster at quarterback, and so that down part of the cycle really was a bottoming out at 3-9. But if they could turn that around to go 8-5 this year, that's a step That's a step in the right direction. It's an indication that things are back on track, which is what you really need this year. You need a sign that what happened last year is not going to be repeated. That last year is the anomaly. That last year is in the past. It was a one-off, and you're going to be back to 8-9 wins again, right quick. That's what you need from this team this year. Now, to get that, you're going to need the offense to be good or above average. Like, I don't even need to set the bar all that high because we've seen teams with just okay offenses go out and, win 8-9 games. 2008 Pitt did not have a great offense. They had a great running back in LaShawn McCoy, but they didn't have a great offense, and they went 9-4. 2022 Pitt, not a great example because they didn't have a great offense. They went 9-4, but they had a defense that won them a lot of games in November. At least 3 out of the 4 games they won that month. And so you need that balance. And I guess, we've spent 15 minutes talking about the offense. I don't think the defense will be on the level of that 2022 defense because they don't have a player like Kalijah Kancey, right? That's understandable. I think the defense will be okay. I think the back 7 will be pretty good. I think the defensive line is a big question mark. It's a question mark because we don't know what these players are capable of, and it's a question mark because they might not actually be that good. They brought in a bunch of transfers, but we'll see what those guys are able to do. They've got some highly touted freshmen and redshirt freshmen, but again, kind of unproven. And the returning guys haven't done a whole lot in their careers. Don't really know what to expect out of them at this point. You're looking for some late career surges from a few key guys like a Nikai Johnson or a Bam Brema. And I mean, you'll have those sometimes, but it's hard to count on those things. It's hard to rely on a late career surge. I can look at it and say, look, Shakir Soto moved from defensive end to defensive tackle in 2015, and he did a great job. It could happen again. I mean, it could, but is that something you're really going to count on? And so Nikai Johnson moving from end to tackle, well, yeah, there's precedent. A guy could move from end to tackle and be really good. But this is a guy in his 4th year. You feel like you're starting to run out of time. And so we'll see. I kind of think Nikai Johnson can be good. We'll see. So there's big question marks up front on defense. Back 7 should be pretty good. A little bit of youth and inexperience at linebacker and corner, but I think there's talent, even if there's youth and inexperience. I think there's talent. I think the safeties will be really good. Probably the strongest position on the team. I think the defense will be fine. They'll have times where they give up a bunch of plays. They'll have times where they make a few plays. For the most part, in most games, they'll play well enough to win. Just got to get points. I don't think you can rely on that defense holding everybody under 21 points. I mean, like in college football, you shouldn't really be in a position where you're relying on your defense to hold everyone under 21 points. If you're doing that, then your offense is pretty bad. Your offense is not holding up its end of the deal. In college football, it's very hard to hold every opponent under 21 points. unless you have an elite unit. And while I like some of the pieces on Pitt's defense, I don't think it's an elite unit. And so you can't put that pressure on the defense. Oh, you got to hold everybody under 21. No, that's not fair to them. What has to happen is the offense has to score. They got to get the ball to El Barto. They got to find good options out of the backfield. They have to, maximize Kanate Johnson and Kanate Mumfield and Kenny Johnson. See what you can get out of the transfers. Raphael Williams and Sincere Lee. And Nate Yarnell. Here's the key with Yarnell. If I said it once, I've said it a million times. Be efficient. Get the ball to the receivers. Protect the football. Those three things. And really, it's two things. It's get the ball to the receivers and protect the football. Because if you do that, then you're going to be efficient. I don't know if he can be a game changer at quarterback. I don't know. He hasn't shown that he can. But what he has shown is that he can be efficient, he can get the ball to the receivers, and he can protect the football. Don't throw interceptions. Don't throw the ball to the other team. Get it to your receivers. Don't throw it to the other guys. Be efficient with the football. And if you do that, you maybe don't need to be a game changer, particularly if the offensive scheme is all it's cracked up to be. So, we'll see. What do I think Pitt's going to do this year? I'm going to write this on Panther-Lair.com, but I'll say it here as well. I'm going to go with 8-5. Either 7-5 in the regular season, they win a bowl against a G5 program, or they go 8-4 in the regular season and lose a bowl against a power conference program. And inevitably, if they lose 5 games in the season, there are going to be some head scratchers in there. There are going to be some points that frustrate you. But on the whole, 8-5 is a pretty nice bounce back from 3-9. And I think this team is capable of it. So that's my prediction right now on July 31st. It is subject to change and very well may change tomorrow or by August 31st or maybe September 1st, depending on what we see on August 31st. That's my prediction. Leave your prediction in the comments, either here on YouTube or in the message boards at Panther-Lair.com. And while you're at it, like this video and subscribe, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. Thanks so much for tuning in today. Don't forget, we got a lot of coverage coming your way from training camp all throughout the day today. Looking forward to it. Hope you are as well. It's going to be at Panther-Lair.com, so make sure you tune in and check all of that out. Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com. Thanks for watching today. Hope you have a great Wednesday, and we will catch up with you tonight on the live show at 8:30 p.m. and then tomorrow for the Morning Pit right here on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com.